Hello, and welcome back to an introduction to composition. In this video, we're going to explore melody, and we're going to compose some melodies to fit with the chord sequences from the last video. Let's get started. So, what's a melody? A melody is a series of single notes, often popularly called the tune. The melody is often higher than the chords or the bass line, but not always. And I find the easiest way to think about it is if you think about a popular song, the melody is that vocal part that is being sung. A really easy example of this is something like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, where our melody goes. So that's our main melody, and we could fit chords with that. But that higher part, that part that you would sing, that's the main melody. We looked last time at C major, and that's going to really help us to understand the notes that we're going to use as part of our melody. From the last video, we know that C major has the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, and that the distance between C and C is an octave. Now, the only problem with using all of the notes from C major to make our melody is that we can sometimes get some pretty nasty discords if we play something like a C chord, but an F in the melody. Or another example is playing an F chord, but a B in the melody. You get this sort of quite a big clash between the B and the C and the A. And even the F and the B is quite dissonant. So as this is an introduction to composition, we're not going to go too far into why that occurs and why sometimes discords are really useful and why sometimes we'd prefer that they weren't there. But what we are going to do is we're just going to adapt our scales slightly, and we're going to use something called the C Major Pentatonic scale. Now, many of you will immediately link the start of that word pentatonic to maybe something like the start of the word pentagon. And we've got similarities between the two. So a pentagon is a five-sided shape, and pentatonic is talking about 5 notes in a scale. Let's take a look. So the C major pentatonic has got the 5 notes C, D, E, G, and A, which means we miss off the 4th note, which is F, and the 7th note, which is B. And this reduces the opportunity for dissonance and means that hopefully our melody will fit really well with the chords. So let's compose some melodies. So in the last video, I had the chord sequence C, F, D minor, G. And I'm going to start today by composing a melody that fits over that. Now, there are lots and lots of different ways that you can compose a melody, but we're just going to look at 3 of them to give you some idea as to how you might want to get started. So the first, which I think is a really great option, is to repeatedly play that chord sequence that you've got and try and hear in your head whether there's a melody that you think would fit over that. This is called audiation. So you're trying to hear something in your head before you play that instrument. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play that sequence a couple of times. I'm going to demonstrate what I might hear in my head and then how I'd put that on piano. So once you've heard that in your head, one thing you might want to then start doing is start humming it, or maybe start trying to sing it or verbalize it, and then try and find those notes on the piano, and then try and play that with the chord sequence itself. So here's just a demonstration of how that might work. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. So on the first time I listened through and I tried to find something in my own head. On the second time I then sort of hummed it and verbalized it. And then on the third time I found what the note is, and then I played along what I heard in my head. Now, it's going to take a while to do that, especially when you started. That idea of finding the first note, da 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 dum, I already knew in my head that was going to be E, D, C. I had a feeling that was where it's going to be. And I had that feeling because over time and through practice, I know that if I'm playing a C major chord and I hear the note dum, I know that that's the third and I know where to start. So don't worry if that process takes you a really long time, but if you can hear a melody in your head and then try and bring it out of your head and put it onto your instrument, that for me certainly is the best, most expressive way of composing. It means that you're not limited by your own ability to play something, you're only limited by your own creativity in your head, which I think is limitless, probably. So another option to try is improvising over your chord sequence. Improvising, in a very basic sense, is playing around with different notes and experimenting as you play the chord sequence through. So let's just give that a try. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was me improvising over the chord sequence. Now, if you've never done that before, do give it a try, even if you find it difficult. Remember, no one's listening to you play. This is just a way of you working out the melody for your composition. So option number 3 is to have that chord sequence already, but then pick which starting note you want to start on and experiment by going up and down, maybe by step or by leap, so that you know exactly where you're going to start. So for this example, I'm going to start on the note C. That will be my first melody note. And then I'm going to go up from there. And then I'm going to eventually come back down from there. And I'm probably going to end on D, I think. So that was a much more methodical kind of way of working. I knew I wanted to start on C. I knew I wanted to end on D. I didn't know exactly what would happen in the middle, but then I used that sort of improvising approach again just to make something up as I went along. Now you could design the whole of your melody without listening to your chord sequence, but you might find that some of the notes don't work very well. So I'd really strongly suggest play that chord sequence or have a recording of that chord sequence on your phone, and then play over the top of that chord sequence, just so you can hear how to fit everything together. So, over the course of this video, we've looked at 3 different ways of composing a melody. The first being audiation, hearing something in your head and then trying to bring it out through verbalizing it or vocalizing it and then play it on your instrument. The second being improvisation, where you're using the notes of the pentatonic scale to sort of play around with different ideas and then try and write that as part of your melody. And the third being that much more methodical way of choosing the start note, choosing the end note, and then trying to fill in the gaps. So it's time for you to try. So what I'd like you to do now is to try the 3 different techniques for composing a melody to see which one works best for you at the moment. Remember to record what you do so you can come back to it later. Start by writing a melody for your first section and then move on to writing a different melody for your second section. So the melody in your A section will be different to the melody in your B section, just in the same way that your chords are different in the A section and the B section. Take your time writing the melody, and it's a really good idea to now pause this video and go off and experiment with those ideas. And then once you've got a couple of ideas, come back to the next part of the video to see how you can develop the melodies. Now that you've got your main melodies for your A and your B section, we're going to look at how you can develop your melodies over the course of your piece. This is because if you just play the same melody over and over again, you're probably going to find that both you and your listeners get a little bored. So I'm going to give you 8 possible ways of developing your melody. You don't have to use all of them, but they're just going to give you 8 different things that you can try to develop your melody. So first, let's have a listen to the melody that we're going to use for this. So it's going to go. And the first possible option is that we're going to move our melody up by an octave. What does that mean? Well, it means that instead of starting on this E, we're going to start on this E here. So let's try that. The second is to add some extra notes to that melody. So the first time I'm going to play the normal melody, and then the second time I'm going to add some notes to it. Here we go. So hopefully you heard that the first time the melody did this at the start, and the second time it did this. So I've added that going down to the C and coming back up again. So another possible option to do with adding notes is to play your melody the same, but add some notes at the end of it. So here's an example where I'm going to play the normal melody first, and then I'm going to extend the melody at the end by adding some extra notes. Here we go. So in that example, I played the melody 4 times. The first time and the third time were the same, but the second time was just a little bit different to the first time. And then the fourth time had a big development on the end where I played some different notes as well. So that gives you another possible way of developing your melody by extending the notes at the end and then maybe changing some as well. Another really good option if you've already got quite a complex melody is actually take some notes away from your melody. Let's try that. So I took away the second half of that melody from all of that version, just to make it a little bit more simple and to provide a little bit of contrast if you were to compare that to the initial melody that I had. So the next option is fairly easy to do and can provide a really nice contrast. And in this example, we're going to change the rhythm. So instead of going, the rhythm's now going to go. So what I've done is I've changed the length of some of those notes to change the rhythm. Let's have a listen to that in context. So the next idea is to play a very similar pattern but move it slightly higher or slightly lower. So for that I'm going to take the start of my original melody that goes like this, and I'm going to keep playing that same sort of pattern where I start on one note, I go down by a note, and then go up to the same note, and then go higher to the next note. And I'm going to use that pattern within the pentatonic scale. So I'm going to go, let's try that with the chords. So we're now going to try halving or doubling the length of the notes. So we're changing the rhythm again. Firstly, I'm going to try doubling the length. So here's the original melody. And doubled, it sounds like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the original melody first. I'm going to play that twice, and then I'm going to play the melody with the rhythm doubled. Here we go. And you'll notice that time that the chords stayed the same length. So the chords are still 4 beats each, but it's just that the melody takes twice as long because the rhythms have been doubled. Let's try halving the rhythm. So this last option works really well if you've got some big leaps as part of your melody. So if you start on an E, for example, and then you jump to a C, what you could actually do is fill in the gaps by going E, G, A, C. So I'm just going to play an example in which there are some big gaps to begin with, and then I fill them in on the second time round. All of these are just options for developing your melody. It's a really good idea to try them in turn, and that brings us to our next task. So what I want you to do is to compose a development of your melody for when your A section repeats, and then use different techniques to help develop your B section melody. So this means you'll have your A section with your original melody, and then your B section with your original melody. And then if you bring your A section back again, it will have your developed melody in there. And then when you bring your B section back, that will also give you an opportunity to have a developed melody in your B section. So you now have 2 contrasting sections with melodies for both of those sections and some ideas for how to develop your melody for when those sections come back. So it's now time to take the structure you designed in the second video, put it together with the harmony and the melody that you've composed in the third and fourth videos, and continue to compose your piece. In the next video, I'm going to model how to follow the whole of this process if you're composing in MuseScore, just so you can see exactly what I would do if I was working at home on this type of composition task. That's it for now. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments section below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you'd like notifications for when the next videos are out. See you next time.